Hey everyone, I'm Nishagni Prakash and this is Nishagni Tarot, where you receive inspired insights to create an empowered life. So, welcome to another episode of Books and Tarot. And today, before I start the review of my book, I would like to offer a trigger warning. So, the topic this book deals with might be, something that some people might find squeamish or uncomfortable with. So if you want, just read through the bio in the description box and then you can decide whether you want to watch this video or not. Alright, so in today's episode of Books and Tarot, we will be discussing Cannibalism, A Perfectly Natural History by Bill Schutt. This book is, I think, one of the best non-fiction books I have read so far. This is a book that I read, I think, about 2 years ago, and it is something that I haven't been able to put out of my mind for a very long time. It is really interesting, chock full of information, extremely humorous, and it really sets you thinking about the world, the evolution of all the creatures in the world, and about where we're headed as humanity, in the future. So I made some notes over here so I don't forget about what points I need to cover. So let's get started. So Bill Schutt, the writer or the author of the book, is a professor of biology at LIU Post, and he's a resident research associate at American Museum of Natural History. So he certainly has the pedigree to dive into this particular topic, and he's done so with with an amazing insight, with both clinical eyes and that of a layman's perspective, which is what makes this book Cannibalism so wonderful to read, even if you have absolutely no scientific background, no information or other knowledge of biology or cannibalism or anthropology, anything. So you can understand the scientific concepts he lays down over here, the cultural aspects that he covers, the anthropological aspects that he covers, the biological aspects that he covers, genetics, epigenetics. There's a lot of information in this which has been really made bite-sized and drilled down so that the layperson like me or you can understand. So this book is, I would say, it's sort of like a buffet table, not rather than a book that goes, dives, headfirst deep into a single point of cannibalism. It sort of gives us different perspectives in a bite-sized manner. So we learn about cannibalism in the natural kingdom. Bill talks of cannibalism in the form of parent animals eating their offspring, or the offsprings eating their parent animal, for a variety of reasons. It could be in order to gain nutrition, for territory, for mating rights, and to get control over their group. He talks of animal warfare. There's a lot of information, really wonderful stuff about different animals. He talks of different species and why cannibalism exists in that particular species as well. And it's really informative to learn about, especially if you're interested in wildlife and cannibalism in wildlife. Then Bill talks of the possibility of cannibalism existing in the dinosaur periods, where certain dinosaur species might have been cannibalistic, and he gives certain theories or certain research papers as evidence to show that yes, there were certain dinosaur species which were cannibalistic, and that's really informative and interesting to know about as well if you're particularly interested in paleontology. After we cover the animal kingdom, Bill moves into the more gory or the more squeamish part, which for many people, which is the human cannibalism, the history of cannibalism in humanity. And he starts right at the beginning, right from the earliest hominid species. We look at Neanderthals and other hominid species to find out whether they engaged in cannibalism. Then Bill moves on to Homo sapiens, and we look at the history of cannibalism not just from a biological and physiological perspective, as in the realistic perspective of yes, it occurred, but Bill covers cannibalism from a cultural standpoint. He covers it in terms of a political standpoint, in terms of trade, in terms of the geopolitical issues that were happening. For example, one particular chapter, which is extremely poignant and very powerful, is how cannibalism was used as a excuse by white colonizers to colonize and control communities of color, to condone aspects such as slavery or the murder and rape of indigenous communities. And he talks of how cannibalism was often used as a tool to prove to the Western world, to the white world in particular, how communities of color were backward, how they were primitive, and how it was the responsibility of the white colonizers to show them the new world and to take control of the assets and the lands of the colored communities, to do the BIPOC communities a favor. So it's a really interesting conversation. It's a really interesting section, which I think a lot of us would love to learn about, especially given the current political climate that's going on. And you'll get a lot of really good insight about this particular less known angle of colonization and slavery. And that was a really interesting part for me. After that, Bill also covers how cannibalism is considered, or rather spoken about, in different religious texts such as the Bible, and what certain Bible verses have to say about this particular practice. He mentions there are sections about cannibalism in different mythologies, in Aztec mythology, Mexican mythology, Greek, Indian, Islamic, and Chinese, Japanese, you name it. He's got certain examples from various sources collated about how there are evidences of cannibalism from various countries in the world. Now again, these are just theories what he's putting forth. He's not trying to prove that yes, these countries, so these people did engage in cannibalism. This book, Cannibalism, is a source material for various theories that various researchers have put together about cannibalistic behaviors and tendencies across the world. And we look at, after all of this, so far we've looked at cannibalism from a historical perspective. After this, Bill Schutt covers cannibalism in today's environment, and we look at things like how some new mothers in certain communities eat, especially in the Western world. I mean, this is something that he talks of is is becoming more prevalent in America in particular, is about placenta eating. So where after the birth of the baby, the mothers store the placenta and then they consume it in the belief that it gives them nutrition. So he looks into the scientific validity of this particular practice. Then he talks of how bones or skulls from the deceased are crushed to make bone powder, which is used in certain Eastern communities as medicine. He also talks of bone moss, which is basically when if a body has been decaying and the bones are left out in the air, after a point, maybe after a couple of years, a certain type of moss, a very particular type of moss, starts to grow on the bones. And in certain cultures, that moss is considered to be edible and it is harvested from those bones. And he talks of that particular the scientific validity and the cultural aspect of bone moss as well. Beyond this, Bill also talks of certain diseases which were, before they were diagnosed or before they were correctly diagnosed, which were considered to have risen due to cannibalistic behaviors. He speaks of a couple of diseases as well, which today of course have been proved that they have nothing to do with cannibalism, but at an earlier point in time when they were first discovered, many people thought that these cannibalistic practices were the genesis of these diseases. So there's a lot of information packed in this particular book, and in the last few chapters there is a very tiny section about just a couple of pages where he does mention about cannibalism in the form of a sexual fetish. So he talks of how it has been a fetishized tendency in today's community, which sort of binges on true crime, and how there's been a sort of desensitization towards cannibalism. So overall, this book, Cannibalism, A Perfectly Natural History, is amazing. You will definitely, like reading this if you enjoy learning about human evolution, about a very less spoken about a taboo subject such as cannibalism. The book is written in a very easy to understand manner. Bill has a very humorous tone of voice, and you will find yourself chuckling in many areas. There is a lot of all these technical concepts have been made very easy, and I think this is a book that is going to be like a treasured piece of literature in anyone's library. So definitely pick this up. Now, in terms of the tarot card for this particular book, I had a bit of a problem choosing the card because it's such a different book from what is usually found, and I had to think a lot. And finally, I decided to just choose the Hanged Man. And the reason for my choice of the Hanged Man is because the Hanged Man is a card which represents our looking at the world differently, stopping and considering different perspectives and analyzing different viewpoints in the world. And this book really makes you think about the world and about humanity in a different light. And one more aspect of the Hanged Man is that during the pause when you're considering different perspectives, there is a sort of identity crisis that happens. And this book, Cannibalism, definitely makes you wonder about what humans are capable of and what we're really capable of. I mean, we would all like to believe that we are completely, as pure as milk or as white as rice. But the truth is, humanity's history, or the history of all natural creatures in this world, has mixtures of the light and the dark. So this book really makes you wonder about life as a whole, and about cannibalism in particular from different perspectives, and it will really make you think. So which is why I have chosen the Hanged Man to represent this book. And yeah, so pick up this book if you like non-fiction, if you like learning about biology, anthropology, about paleontology. There's a hodgepodge of everything, but it's really beautifully done, and you will definitely love this book. Okay, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Books and Tarot, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day. Bye.